Hello my creative friends, it's time to take another art break, and today I created this sweet little patriotic theme painting in celebration of America's 250th birthday this summer. I'm going to begin with doing some drawing steps. If you would like to try to draw this yourself, I'm going to break the shapes down and show you how you can make this and try drawing it yourself if you would like to. And then I'll walk you step by step of how I did the watercolor and even added a little bit of scribbly bits in the end. For those of you who'd like to have some help drawing, I do have a sketchbook membership. That's where I have all of the line tracers for any of the paintings that I create on my channel. If you would like to join, the Ko-fi link is right there. Go ahead and check that out. It's very reasonably priced, and I so appreciate all those who have joined and support my channel that way. Thank you so much. I appreciate you doing so. Well, let's get started and create this cute little patriotic painting. The drawing steps I'm going to share with you is just for the wheelbarrow idea of how you can make a wheelbarrow, and then some of the simple flowers that I added inside of there. I'm first going to start out with a rectangle shape. Now, a wheelbarrow always has this rounded front where it's going to be having the rounded area. And then you're going to come at an angle because your area is going to be narrower here and a little bit longer through this area. So once you have that drawn, you can go ahead and erase it. And right there, you already have kind of a wheelbarrow shape. Now this is the part where you're going to be adding your handle. So you just follow your shape here. You can come around and then down, and then it's going to come forward. This is where you're going to have your little round wheel in the front. So this is the round wheel area here. Whoops, that's kind of big. All right, so let's make it a little bit smaller. That's going to be the rounded wheel and that area. And this is your handle. And of course, you're going to need another handle that you would probably see. So you're going to just follow that same shape that you drew there. And then a wheelbarrow needs to have the little stand underneath that it's going to sit on when you're not using it. So there's going to be a shape here, and it's going to be the same length as your wheel goes down. So it's going to be, I'm just going to do a little triangle one like that that's underneath. And that's basically it for the wheelbarrow shape. So if you think about it as being rounded, add it back this way and add an angle, you're going to have your wheelbarrow shape. Now let's work a little bit on the flowers. I'm going to show you how I did two of the main flowers inside of the wheelbarrow. I did some big old daisies, and daisies I like to start with an oval, and then I like to do these little spokes so then I can kind of keep track of how many petals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now the petals in the back are going to be shorter length. And by making them shorter and then getting a little longer, that's going to help it look like my flower is going around and has a lot more dimension. So by doing it that way, you're going to have a lot more shape. Now to add the leaves, you can tuck them behind, and basically you're doing an arched eyebrow shape one direction, and then you're going to go the opposite direction for there. I like to usually add at least 2, and you can just come down and do that same arched look there. And that's how you can do a simple little daisy flower shape. Now the other flower I added was a tulip, and I start with a U shape, and then I usually do a few little wiggles at the top. Then I do a half of one and come in. And that's how I do my little tulips. And if you want to do some from behind, you can add just little wiggle bits behind there. I like to add a little rounded area at the bottom, and then often when I draw my tulips, I draw the stem at an angle. And for the tulip leaves, they're wider at the bottom, and then they get narrower as they come to the top to a point. And they have a little bit of wiggleness to it. And that's your simple little tulip. Now, if you'd like to go ahead and do the exact drawing that I did, you can easily join the sketchbook membership and check it out there. Check the Ko-fi page out. I do all the hand drawing part, and then you can simply do the tracing and painting. Well, let's get started and do the painting part. A new tip I wanted to share with you is I'm going to keep my kneaded erasers inside of some little box container, because what often happens is that these are sticky, so they'll pick up little pieces of bits and whatever I might have on my desk, and who knows. So by keeping it in a box, that's just going to help keep them a lot cleaner. I had seen somebody else do that, and I thought that's a great idea. I'll pass on that tip. I'm going to be using this little round brush. It's a mini brush. I'll have a link inside of the description if you might be interested in checking those out. I'm thinking I'm going to be using those on the little stripes and any other place that I might need to have some small amount of paint. And the majority of my painting, I'm probably going to just use the Velvet Touch number 6 brush. I'll have a link inside of that as well. And of course, I always have a paper towel in my hand to be able to control the water and make sure that I don't get too much on my paper right away. Now this is very much an illustration, so I'm going to be doing areas of paint, and then I need to make sure that if I don't want those colors to blend into each other, I need to give that a dry where I paint before I move into another area that might touch it. So I'm going to speed this up as you watch me go, and I'm just going to be laying in the colors. I chose to go ahead and start with the red. Now I'm choosing to do 3 flowers in that shade of red down below, and I'm thinking about triangle shapes of carrying my color across my painting. So I do one to the left, drop down and choose to do that one in the middle, and then the other one off to the right. I do go up above and make one tulip up above there, red, and then I do another one off to the right hand side. I'm thinking about balance, so where my colors are going to be. So I want to make sure my colors are spread throughout my painting. Now I put on the first layer in tea consistency, and then I'm going right back into my paint, kind of basically dipping out of the paint box, and it's probably more like a milk consistency or cream, and I'm tapping just a little bit of that darker concentration of the paint at the base of the petals. And because my flowers are already wet, that darker color concentration of pigment should flow up and into that petal and create that really pretty watercolor blend. Now I'm going to switch my brushes to the mini brush, and I'm going to be using that to create the stripes on my flag. This is a really small little detail, so I thought by using this small little detail brush I would have a little bit more control. But again, I'm not all into really doing super hyper realistic paintings anyway, but it just is going to give me a little bit more control to be able to put these small little stripes in. You could also do this with a water-based marker if you would like to try doing that as well. I did add a bow in the front of my wheelbarrow, and I'm going to be giving that bow a few little red stripes. Get as creative as you would like when you're doing yours. You can do exactly the way I do it, or you can be very creative and try it on your own. I always encourage my sketchbook members, because you already have the sketch laid out for you, is you can easily trace more than one, so that way you can try different color combinations and not have to worry about having to do so much time in drawing your paintings. You can just already start at the sketch point and then play around with your paint colors. You can see me adding the red on the handles. That's just making sure I'm bouncing that red color all the way around my painting. I'm going to add a little bit of that red on the wheel in the front too. So I have some red at the top and in the middle and another bottom. As a part of the stylized lettering up above, the O is the shape of a heart. I'm going to paint that the same way I've done the rest of my red. I'm first starting out with a tea consistency color, then picking up a higher concentration of the red and tapping it in on one side. Now let's work a little bit on the yellow centers. I'm going to go in and just tap a little bit of this really goldenish color in the center, and I'm just fine if my red kind of blends in just a little bit, because those two colors will go well together. Now let's go ahead and work a little bit on adding some green leaves. I've chosen 2 different shades of green, a lighter and a darker shade of green. When you're doing these little paintings, when you're doing all this mixture of leaves in the back, the foliage, you want to make sure you have some different shades. So choosing a light, a medium shade, and even a dark shade of green to get a variance in your colors, that will really add the depth to your painting. First, I'm starting with my lightest shade, and then I'll be working to my medium and then to my dark. I gave my painting a dry with my hairdryer, and now I'm going to be working on the blue, and I'm choosing a light shade of blue first to lay in my blue areas. I'm going to be laying the lightest shade of blue on first, and then I choose a slightly darker shade of blue and then tap that color on while the light blue is still wet. I'm going to be doing it the same way that I did my red. I start with my lightest color and then choose the darker color and then tap it at the base of my flowers and on one side of my flag. I'm going to be adding that same shades of blue to the top part of my bow. I really wanted more of a patriotic feeling with the bow, so it's going to have a red, white, and blue feeling as well. Before I move down to the wheelbarrow, I'm going to be giving my piece a complete dry. I was going to be making that wheelbarrow the same shade of blue that I had used for my flowers and on the flag. First, I'm starting with the lightest shade, and then while it's wet, I will be adding that darker shade of blue on there to add a few little shadows around the flower and the leaf areas, and just kind of spreading it out to give this wheelbarrow, since it's such a larger shape of my painting, a lot more interest than just being one solid color. At this stage, I can also check to see how my other colors have dried and if I need to add another layer of color on top of them. I'm going to be adding a little bit more red to my reds and then tapping in just randomly here and there, kind of adding just little spots of red with not necessarily being flowers there, but just adding a light shade of red here and there to kind of fill in my spaces. My wheelbarrow has dried, so I'm going to be working a little bit on the metal pieces, the arms of my wheelbarrow. I'm just going to be putting in one layer of Payne's Gray at first, letting it dry, and then adding the shadows when I come back. This color worked perfectly to add a few more shadows to my wheelbarrow as well. I'm also going to be using it for the flagpole up above. Once I had gotten this far along, I decided the little wheel in the front needed to be the same shade of blue as I had painted the flowers up above. At this stage, my greens are pretty much dry and all my flowers are dry, so I'm going to be beginning the stages of working on that little kitty in the middle. I gave him more of a pinkish nose and added a little bit of that pink to the inside of his ears. I wanted this kitty to have a black and white feel, so I'm going to start with a very watered down shade of black, and I'm going to be putting that on his forehead and on his ears, but then leaving the middle of his face white, and then bumping down and putting some of the black on his body and a little bit on his paws. It's going to take a couple layers. This is going to dry a lot lighter as it dries because, as often, watercolor doesn't look the same when it's wet. It always dries a little lighter. So this is a beginning shade of color of what I'm going to begin with, but it'll be a lot darker in the end. Then I'm just picking up a few of the shades of green that I had used up above to put in a little grass line so my wheelbarrow isn't floating. I did give my kitty some little pink cheeks as well, and I start from the outside of that cheek line and then blend it towards the nose. I'm adding another shade of the darker color of my black, and I'm going to be adding a third there as well. Adding your layers gradually and keeping them actually kind of light and layering them, that's really going to help when you're using those darker colors like black. If you go too quick, too fast, your colors look very flat and you don't get that inner glow of having the watercolor, of having those layers gradually build. So start slow and then build your colors. Now I'm going to add another layer of that Payne's Gray to the metal area down below since it's dried. I'm also going to be using a little bit of that Payne's Gray up above in my wheelbarrow to add even a few more shadows. At this stage of the painting, I'm almost done with the watercolor. I'm just going to continue to add a few more layers and then checking my colors as they dry to make sure I have enough contrast in my colors. For this painting, I do have lettering up above, and I really didn't want to do it in black. I wanted it in blue, but I didn't have a permanent marker to do this lettering in, and I should have known better, but I still went ahead and used it, and I do have an oopsie moment during this painting, and I'll show you how I fix it. You'll have to let me know in the end if you think it looks okay or if I really did blow it and ruin the painting. But the lettering does look great. I think it looks fine in the blue. I just should have used a permanent marker. You know, I know things. I know this, but I still did it anyway. And I so wished I hadn't. I do use a little bit of Micron pen in here, and I add just some more scribbly bits to my kitty to give it more of a furry look up at the top and around his ears, just to loosen him up a little bit and give him more of a furry look. First, I do just a little bit of the Micron pen, just here and there. But in the end, because I end up with adding a bunch of different blue to the top to fix my oops on my lettering, I do go back in and add more black to be able to balance my painting out. And this is where I bring the color pencils out. If you watch me, you know I like to add scribbly bits using the color pencil. This is the Canson brand watercolor paper, so it's got a little bit smoother texture to it, and it works perfect to add color pencil on the top. And this is where I start running into problems. I first dried the marker using my heat tool, hoping to set that color. And then I wanted to use my eraser to erase any extra pencil marks, and my marker smeared. So now I have these halos of color around my lettering. So what could I do? I decided, all right, let's keep on working with it, and we'll add some water and see what I come up with. Because that marker was water-based, I knew it was going to bleed out and continue to leach out into my painting. But what I didn't expect is that the color was going to be so purple-blue. And I didn't really want it to be purple-blue, but now I had purple-blue, so I was going to be working with that. So I tried to take some of that color and then blend it out throughout my painting. I even tried lifting a little bit of the color by putting a paper towel on that, and it didn't really phase it. But you know, you use all the tricks you can. I went ahead and dried it a little bit more, and then I went back over my lettering with the pen just to try to re-establish the lettering. At this stage, when you're trying to fix something or make things work that you weren't planning on, is to try to make it look like it wasn't an accident. So I'm going back in with my marker and making the lettering dark again. I'm going to be adding a few more layers here to try to now blend that purplish blue that I didn't have anywhere else in my painting to try to make it work. But before I go any farther with the blue, I'm going to be adding some white stars, and I'm going to be using the product called Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. I've always wanted to try this white to see how it works, and it's really kind of more like almost a chalky quality of paint. And you can put that on your top of your watercolor, and the cool thing about this one is that the color from the watercolor won't bleed up through and change the white. So I've always wanted to try it, so I bought a bottle. I'll have a link down inside of the description if you would like to try it yourself. And it worked great to add the stars with this product. Okay, now that I'm this far, it's back to figuring out how to make that purple blue work. So I decided I would add some sort of extra border around the edges. So I'm doing just irregular lines, stopping and starting, doing little dash marks, and bringing that purple around, that purpley blue around the outside of my painting. When you're going to do this process of trying to fix something and make it look like it really does belong, you're going to find that one thing leads into another, which leads into another. So I felt that the line work needed to match the lettering a little bit more, so I went ahead and added a little bit of water to that line work as well. I also needed to add just a little bit more darker blue to the background to make it blend now that I had all of this little purpley blue everywhere. At this stage, I think, why not add a few more splashes of that color? So I take my marker on that metal and then add some water and then just tap it on the painting, kind of give it a little bit of a fireworks feel to it. I don't know. At this point, I'm just trying to make everything work. You'll have to let me know in the comments if you think in the end that it all works out. This is the stage where I come back in with my Micron pen and add more dark details to the inside of my painting. Now that I have all of that dark on the outside, I need to add the contrast to the middle, and the Micron pen's going to help me a lot. I'm still doing the real sketchy line so it looks very hand-drawn and not trying to be perfect. So I just add that pretty much everywhere, here and there, just to add that extra bit of dark into the center of my painting. At this stage, I'm going to call it done, and I'm going to take the tape off and put it inside of the frame and see what it looks like. Well, here it is sitting amongst some of the other spring paintings I've done so far on my YouTube channel. Now, this little painting did give me some problems towards the end, and it really didn't turn out the way I thought it was going to. But in the end, I think it turned out as a pretty cute whimsical style painting. If you enjoy whimsical style art, come on over to my channel. I'd love to have more creative friends join me. Leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up. It really does help YouTube push my channel out there. A matter of fact, YouTube thinks that you might like to watch this video. You might want to click it and check it out. Well, thanks for joining me today, and hopefully you'll come back and join me again. And perhaps next time you'll paint right along with me.